Welcome to episode 0, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Gilotra. This series is called Kev's Conversations, and I think this title alone is a really good starting point for discussing the elephant in the room right now. What in the world is Kevin making a podcast series on, and what is his goal behind making a series like this? So let's get right into it in episode 0, where I discuss both of these topics. I've broken down this first episode into 3 separate sections. The first one is where I discuss what exactly this series will be about. Next, I want to discuss what brought me to this idea and why I thought making a series about this topic was important. And at the very end, I want to go through some hypothetical scenarios which you may find yourself in right now to really drive home the importance of this series and why you should consider listening to it at some point in the near future. So let's start with what is this series all about, the first topic. Well, throughout the series, my goal will be to provide information to folks who are trying to decide what professional field they want to pursue or what specific job they want to have when they're growing up. I'll be interviewing professionals working in a variety of fields, as well as students and trainees in those fields to give people a better idea of what the journey is like in the different professions you can pursue. In these interviews, I'll be asking questions that will help provide insight on what a typical day in someone's life might look like for a given job. What did they like or dislike about their job? What made them want to pursue that job in the first place? How is the compensation of their job relative to other jobs within that field? And what other good jobs are there in that field of work? All of these thought-provoking questions will be super informative for everyone, and I hope you gain a lot from these different interviews. Now, before you say, oh man, there's another channel now that's out about school, I really just wanted to be entertained, I think I'm going to turn this off. I ask that you hear me out for a second. I genuinely feel that any student listening to this podcast, whether you be in college, in high school, university, medical school, dental school, any professional school for that matter, I feel that you can benefit from this channel because of the informative discussions and thought processes that will be presented in this series. It might not be your Comedy Central that you tune into on every Saturday night. It might not be your 8-hour Netflix binge session that you do every Wednesday morning. But I think it can still have an impact on the big decisions you make in your life, and that's what makes this channel worthwhile to stay tuned to. As with any other podcast series, you'll also see a number of episodes that are not just interviews, but just general discussions with others about ongoing topics that students tend to come across. You might find these topics more entertaining than the interviews, or maybe the other way around, who knows? At the end of the day, I'll always have a co-host on every episode I plan on doing, whether that be through an interview with a working professional, or just a general discussion with a close friend about ongoing topics in our day-to-day lives. A general theme that I have that's sort of set in place for this entire series is how do you pursue happiness both inside and outside your professional life? When people ask me what I value most in my life, and I know all of my friends will already know this about me when they ask for advice, I always say that you should make decisions that make you happy and always pick the decision that makes you the happiest. That's one of the things which drove me to start this series. It's to help others find happiness inside and outside their professional life. No, I'm not saying I'm an expert at any of this. In fact, there's many parts of my life and everyone else's life which are not the way they want it to be. But at the end of the day, if you can watch a podcast series like this and tune into these various episodes and listen to people working in certain fields, it will allow you to learn a lot about what you want to do for the future, as well as the types of decisions you'll make in your day-to-day lives that will benefit your success. And I hope to learn just as much as all of you as I go about recording and listening to these episodes. So that sort of brings me into topic 2, where I want to discuss why I chose to talk about this stuff and why I thought it was important. What led me to starting this channel? So I want to start this topic off with a general question. How many of you have ever been somewhat confused about what you want to do for a living? I would say a fair amount of you have been at that point. In fact, I think I'm at that point right now. Although I know I want to go into medical school, I have no idea what medical subspecialty or specialty I want to go into. I genuinely feel that choosing whatever career path you want to pursue might be a tough decision, but the specific job you want to have in that career path is going to be one of the most crucial decisions you'll have to make in your life. If you're a doctor, do you want to work in a private clinic or a hospital? Do you want to go into medicine or do you want to be more of a surgeon? For lawyers, do you want to work for a big law firm or do you want to start your own private practice? For engineers, do you want to pursue the business side of the engineering industry or do you want to strictly stay in the field of sciences and work on your craft? In general, do you want a job that gives you lots of money but minimal satisfaction and happiness? Or do you want a job that doesn't pay as well but makes you extremely happy? There's so many factors you have to consider when you pick a career path, it's absolutely insane. Now, I'm not saying you have to pick right now at this very moment, but just thinking about the ideas is good for a start, especially at a time like this, where all of us are stuck inside. COVID 19 has literally broken loose, and we all have to sit at home for the next whoever knows how long, probably several months. We're in quarantine. We really do get time now to focus on ourselves and be with our family, and it's a good time to consider a lot of these big decisions you'll have to make in the near future. All right, so in terms of putting this into perspective for you, if you still didn't get the gist of how important your job choice really is, I want to break down the typical work week. Typically, an individual will work 40 hours a week, given that you had a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job. We could even up that to 60 hours a week if you had a very busy job where you worked overtime and a lot of weekends. Let's say in an ideal world you get enough sleep, although I know for most of us university students we probably don't. That would be another 56 hours a week sleeping, assuming you slept 8 hours a night, just so you can perform well enough for your demanding full time job and not be a zombie the next day you wake up. Of the 168 hours in any given week, you will spend over 100 hours, so that's more than half of the hours in a week, working and sleeping enough so you have the function to work, and that's in addition to the time you spend getting to and from work every day, which leaves you with less than 1/3 of your week left over to enjoy and relax whatever hobbies you have on the side or whatever family time you've set apart. So there is no doubt that your job takes up a really big aspect of your life. But let's imagine the job that you have makes you extremely miserable. Let's say you don't want to be at work. In fact, you might spend most of your time at work checking the clock to see when you can go home. You never want to wake up and go to work. You spend a lot of time thinking about what could have been had you chosen another field. And I genuinely feel that a lot of this could have been avoided if you simply put in the time towards researching about different fields to see what you genuinely enjoyed and really liked. Now, I think for some people, this might not be super important, right? Your job might be something you simply do so you can put dinner on the table and pay your bills so you can live a good life outside of work. And I think for a lot of people, that might even qualify as a pretty good life. But I genuinely believe that if someone truly wants to live the best possible life, they should pursue a field which they're truly passionate about, simply because, like I mentioned earlier, you spend such a large portion of your life in that field and at your job at work. Personally, I've always wanted to live a life where I wake up and I'm really excited to go to work. I wanted to pursue a field that makes me feel like I'm actually contributing something to the world, and I know for a lot of people listening to this right now, you probably feel the same. That is exactly what motivated me to start this channel. It's to provide people with the information they need and want to hear so they can make more informed decisions, not only for their career, but for how they want to better live their life in the near future. And that's not to say that I've already figured out my life entirely. I am just as confused as other people are, but I hope that through the interviews on this channel, you'll get a better idea of what kind of career you want to pursue and what decisions you want to make in the near future for the given field that you decide to pursue as well. I'd like to highlight that I'm not the guy who makes a YouTube channel to give you cheesy and sappy motivational quotes. I assure you that's not what this channel is about. I simply hope that by interviewing other professionals and having discussions with friends and family and whoever else wants to be a co-host in this podcast, this channel provides you with further insight on the various professions you have considered pursuing for the rest of your life. And I hope that helps you out because I think it's a great initiative, I think it's a creative idea, and I hope that will help you out in the near future. If you're listening to this right now, which most of my university friends are, there's a good chance you either want to go to medical school, you might be in a stream of engineering already, you might be in accounting or finance, maybe you're on the process of starting a business, or you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe you're looking into stocks and trades, maybe you're looking into research-related fields, or teaching, or you want to be a professor in the future. Maybe you want to go into some sort of industry-related field. The list really does go on forever, right? Think about it. You might want to be a chiropractor. You might want to be a physiotherapist, a pharmacist, an optometrist, an athletic or massage therapist, a physician assistant, a paramedic. The list really does go on forever because there's just so many options out there. All of you people will find some sort of advice through this channel because of the variety of different fields that will be presented throughout each episode. In some cases, it might not be an interview that makes you interested in a field, but it might be something that helps you rule out something you didn't want to do. In my eyes, that's a win because it helps you narrow down your choices and helps you make better decisions for the future. In terms of why I personally started a YouTube channel at all, well, in general, I've always wanted to do YouTube. I liked entertaining people, I enjoyed giving opinions about different topics, and I think I can really help people through an initiative like this. I've never been too big on video recording myself doing stuff. That's why I chose the podcast, all of my interviews and episodes for the future. But I've thought about it, and if the channel really does gain popularity and people genuinely really enjoy listening to it, I'd love to transition the podcast into a YouTube channel with some high-end audio and video quality, or I've also considered transitioning the podcast onto other platforms such as Spotify. If you have any other questions about the logistics behind all of these things, feel free to shoot me a message in my Instagram account, which I have in the description below. All right, that brings me to the last section of the podcast, which is where I go through some hypothetical scenarios which you might find yourself in. By now, you probably get the general idea that by listening to interviews with different professionals in various fields of work, you'll be more informed about what you want to do with your life. But you might have not gotten this general idea, and that's why I want to go through some of these hypothetical scenarios. So scenario 1, let's say you're an avid future entrepreneur. All your life, you've wanted to invent or create some sort of business or service or item/product. You wanted to help others and you wanted to advertise it and change the world through that business or service or whatever you're selling. You wanted to be your own boss. You wanted to stay away from the stress that comes with many years of schooling, and you thought that being an entrepreneur is the right path to go. But what if you didn't think about the various stresses that come with being an entrepreneur that are not student or school related? While you're no longer studying for finals and midterms as an entrepreneur or trying to keep up that certification to do your job, you're now a business person and you need to sell your product in order to put the money on the table and live the life you want to live. But what if your product doesn't sell? Now you might have made significant investments into something that can really backfire on your career and financial well-being. Your goal might have been to help people through your product or service, but when the market all of a sudden became really bad, like we have right now during this whole coronavirus situation, all of a sudden you have to start raising some of your prices. And now you're in a situation where you don't find yourself helping people as much, but instead you're overcharging them. And that might not be your fault, but it's just something that came with the job, which you really didn't expect. And all of a sudden that can affect your overall happiness in your profession as an entrepreneur. You never would have envisioned doing that as an entrepreneur, but once again, that's why you needed to know what you were getting yourself into before you headed into it. Okay, scenario 2. Let's say you wanted to be a doctor, but you've never been a fan of studying. You didn't like going to classes or labs or reading textbooks. Well, I would ask you to consider the following question, which a lot of mentors have asked me. Do you see yourself going over 10 years of training to become a doctor as someone who simply does not enjoy studying or being in the books? If you're fortunate enough to live over the age of, if you're fortunate enough to live over the age of 80, over 1/8 of your life would be spent giving up to do something you didn't enjoy, which is studying. And the most successful and happy physicians, from what I've seen, are individuals who enjoyed the process and loved what they were learning along the way. That's something you might start thinking about maybe when I interview a medical student on this channel or a well-established doctor who is now in practice. Either way, that's something you might want to consider as a pre-med right now, correct? There may also be the case where you're a medical student and you know you'll be happy being a doctor, but what if you end up in a specialty that wasn't for you, but you thought it was for you because that's just something you wanted to do your entire life? For example, what if you choose to do a surgical subspecialty and work in an OR for the majority of your life, and eventually you realize that you should have stayed in medicine and you want to work in a clinic because it would have made you happier? There are hundreds, or you can even say 200s, however you want to put it, many subspecialties in medicine, and they're all so unique that each one will have a different impact on your lifestyle, your compensation, your overall career trajectory, whatever you want to put it as. In some case, that lifestyle and career trajectory may not have been what you expected from a career in medicine. And this is another example that emphasizes how making the right decisions during the big moments in your life will help you make the best life possible for your near future. So that's our pre-med scenario 2. Scenario 3. Let's say you're someone who wants to help people in the field of healthcare, but you didn't want to go through the rigorous and long training that was required of you to become a doctor. Now I'm speaking to the future physios, chiros, pharmacists, optometrists, massage therapists, etc., etc. These individuals typically require 2 to 4 years of school after their undergraduate degree, and I think a lot of people who go into these fields eventually want to open a private practice based on the students that I've talked to who want to go into these fields. And a lot of them have said that that's usually where there's more money as well, which is a good decision. I definitely agree with that. But let's say hypothetically you've never been a very business-minded person and you've always sort of been into more of the science side of things. Instead of working for someone, you've now become your own boss, which is the opposite of the entrepreneur, like we talked about earlier. You now manage everything yourself, and all of a sudden, you're a science minded person who has to deal with the additional stress of managing your business's success. Is that something you wanted from the beginning, or is that something you wanted to avoid? That's something you would have to consider and something you'd have to research into before you went into this field and decided to open a private practice. Okay, this last scenario is the most optimistic of the ones I brought up so far. Let's say you did pick the right field. You wanted to be a physiotherapist, you got into physio school. You wanted to be a physician assistant, you got into PA school. You wanted to be an accountant, you got a 5-year contract with a good pay at a well known company. You chose to go in health policy, and you now have a solid government job with financial security and job benefits to support your family. Life seems good, things are swell, but it simply does not end there. There is a very good chance that someone will pursue the right field, but might select a job that they still don't enjoy. For example, what if you don't get along with your boss to the extent that you don't like your working hours and you're not able to see your family as much as you want to? What if you don't get along with your coworkers to the point where every time you have a group project, you're not able to complete it with the efficiency that you want to? What if you don't enjoy working for a specific company that has very different values and views that you do? What if you have your dream job as a healthcare professional, but you work in an area that doesn't allow you to get along with your patients the way that you would expect it? These external factors are just as important to consider in your job, as they will likely contribute to your overall happiness compared to just the actual field that you're practicing in. So not only is it about selecting the right field, it's also about picking the right job, the right specialty, the right subspecialty, and the right position that you have in a given hierarchical chain in your field of work, whether that be for a company, a law firm, or a hospital. Yes, it really does never end. Now you might say, well, if I don't like something, I could always just quit and do something else. And to those people, yes, I do agree with the option of changing jobs or career paths along the way. But at the same time, I'd like to ask, how much do you value your time on planet Earth? Had you better known what a certain field was going to be like, you wouldn't have had to put the resources, including the time, the hard work, the dedication, and the maximal effort into studying for a given field only to not end up pursuing it. There might be a lot of people who do a certain undergraduate degree and end up in a field that's the complete opposite of it. There's lots of people like that, and I'm not saying by any means that that's their fault. I think that life is all about experimenting and figuring things out along the way, and I've always been all for that. But I think there is definitely a limit on how much experimenting you can do until you realize that you've wasted a lot of time doing something you genuinely did not like, and now all of a sudden you can end up in things like debt. You can have very minimal happiness in your life because you pursued something for such a long time and now you don't enjoy it. And had you done the research beforehand, you could have gone to a field that you know you would have liked for sure. So to end off this podcast, I want to leave you with one last message. And this is something I've gotten from a lot of my mentors when they're telling me what are the things I should consider when I make a final decision for my career path. The 3 factors, I will go in order. The first one is prestige. Do you want a career that brings you lots of money and fame? The second one is lifestyle. Does your career give you enough time to have a life outside of work? Or do you want to make your work your lifestyle because you love it that much and you have such an immense passion for it? The last one is passion. And this one is really big for me because I want to love what I'm doing. So the question for passion is, do you really, truly, genuinely love what you're doing? And is that something that you value? Or are you just convincing yourself that you love it so you can get the money and the lifestyle that you want, which comes with your profession? In simple terms, do you live to work, or do you work to live, or are you somewhere in between? At the end of the day, if you can figure out which of those 3 things, prestige, lifestyle, and passion, which of those you value the most, that would be a big part of the battle right there when you're trying to figure out what you want to do for a living. I'm by no means an expert on any of this stuff. Like I said earlier, I hope to learn just as much as anyone else through these interviews as we all go through making this channel and listening to it as I put out my next several episodes over the next few weeks. Other than that, that brings me to the end of episode 0, everyone. I thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. I've always wanted to say this last part here, but I'm officially a YouTuber/podcaster now. So I want to say, don't forget to hit that like button below and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all your love and support, even though it's not that popular right now, but we're going to make it popular eventually. This is Kevin from Kev's Conversations, and I will catch you all next time on episode 1.